Hi everybody, welcome to the 6th webinar session in the Meet Melbourne 2020 online series. In this session, we'll be covering engineering at Melbourne. The Meet Melbourne webinars are part of a series running across May covering all our Melbourne undergraduate courses and disciplines. My name is Katie Potts. I'm a student recruitment coordinator in Melbourne School of Engineering, and tonight I'll be your moderator. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, the University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Thank you for joining the webinar. We're thrilled to have audiences joining live from different time zones in both Australia and overseas. We are recording this session so that it can be accessed afterwards, so if you miss anything and like to go back to it, it will be available online. Throughout the session, you can type your questions into the chat window that you see in the GoToWebinar pop-up box. These questions will be read and the answers will be responded to by my colleagues in Melbourne who are off screen for the duration of the webinar session. So any questions that aren't answered during the session, you can submit to our study website after the webinar and we'll be able to answer them for you that way. Just quickly going over the format of tonight. So tonight you'll be hearing from Professor Jamie Evans, who's our Deputy Dean Academic in the Melbourne School of Engineering. He'll tell you a little bit about himself and his work in engineering and give a presentation on how to study engineering. Following this, there will be a Q&A with our current Masters of Engineering students, Anushka and Jocelyn, and our alumni, Kapil, who is a graduate sustainability consultant at WSP, and Xing, who is the COO and co-founder of Navi Technologies. I'll now hand over to Jamie.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Katie, for that introduction. And thanks all so much for joining us today to hear about engineering at the University of Melbourne. So Katie briefly introduced me, but I want to tell you a little bit more about who I am. Well, I grew up in the wonderful town of Newcastle in New South Wales in the 70s and the 80s, and moved around to lots of different universities, but I find myself now as Deputy Dean Academic in Engineering at Melbourne. But I'm also a professor in electrical engineering, and my research is in wireless communications, including things like 5G and 6G and the Internet of Things. Now, I know that I do research in 5G, but can you please not blame me for COVID-19? Despite what you might have heard, I don't think 5G really is responsible for the spread of COVID-19. Now, I want to tell you about my absolute hero related to my research. And he's this man here, Claude Elwood Shannon. So he actually started back in 1948 the whole of modern digital communications, which is the area that I work in. In his fundamental paper, The Mathematical Theory of Communication, he defined what information actually is, how you measure it, and he looked at the limits on how fast you can send information from one place to another. So I love this man so much. He's so much my hero that my son is named Claude. My daughter, well, her name's Shannon, and my dog is called Elwood. And I really must apologise. My daughter's got a French horn lesson this evening. My son likes to play electric guitar, and boy, Elwood loves to bark. So I'm sorry if any of those things come into the background today. But I'm here to tell you about engineering, what it is, how you study it at Melbourne. So engineering is actually from a Latin word, ingenerare, which means to create. So you might think of engineering as applied science, but I want you now to think of it as meaning to create. It's a very creative discipline. So engineers create solutions that make a real difference to our world and the way we live every day. And there are some of our real students We don't need to use models at Melbourne. We've got such amazing students. Now, engineering uses science and maths. That's really important for engineering. You might associate it with problem solving and design and technology, but I'm going to challenge you to think of all of these things as other aspects that are important to engineering: management and art and communication and teamwork and politics and economics and social science and all of these different things. And it's because technical problems always occur in some context and with many constraints of a non-technical nature. So the broader the engineer, with a really good understanding of the way the world works, generally, not just technically, they're often the best engineers. So how do you become an engineer at Melbourne? Well, I'm going to show you a slide, and there's no Bachelor of Engineering on this slide. But that really doesn't mean that you can't study engineering in Melbourne. It just means you've got to do it in a different way. So all of these undergraduate degrees, Bachelor of Science, Design and Biomedicine, actually have engineering systems majors within them. So these are 3-year degrees, and you can study engineering from the beginning and end up majoring in a particular engineering discipline. But you're not a professional engineer at that point, because you then move into a Master of Engineering. And this is 2 to 3 years long, but it's nearly always 2 years. So if you do a particular major and then you follow on into the Master of Engineering in the same field, you will do a 2-year Master of Engineering. But there's enough flexibility in the program for you to be able to switch. Maybe you do electrical systems and switch to mechanical. And in circumstances like that, maybe the master will be a bit longer, 2.5 to 3 years. So after that, you can go off and get a wonderful job, or also maybe move into a PhD. So it's also an appropriate qualification to move into the PhD. So that's the basic idea. And you can see all the different disciplines that we have: bioengineering, chemical, civil, computing, electrical, and so on. But it's not the full story, because in fact, we've tried to make the entry requirements as modest as we can. And in fact, you can get into the Master of Engineering with any bachelor degree, as long as you have some relevant first-year maths and science prerequisites. So this could be a way that you would do a Bachelor of Commerce. Along the way, in that Bachelor of Commerce, you would do some maths and some science, and that would get you entry into a 3-year Master of Engineering. So this brings me to the point: do we have double degrees or combined degrees? And we do, but they're sequential. And one's a Bachelor and one's a Master's. So you could get a Bachelor of Science and Master of Engineering in 5 years. You could get a Bachelor of Commerce followed by a Master of Engineering in closer to 6 years of full-time study. So that's how it works. Here's a little bit of a sample course plan that you might get in, say, the Bachelor of Science. And what you can see is that the amount of engineering that you do tends to increase within your bachelor's degree over time. You do your maths, you do your science, lots of space for other science or engineering electives, and this breadth, which we think is really important to making a well-rounded engineer. Then by the time you get into the Master of Engineering, it's a lot of advanced subjects and really full-time engineering, but with plenty of opportunities to connect to industry, as I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. So you do your science and maths, more science, the problem solving and the design and the technology, and you might use your breadth to pick up some management, some social science, economics, politics and art, all of those things that we were talking about before that would really broaden your understanding of the world and contribute to you, I think, being a more effective engineer when you go out into the workforce. Oh, and teamwork and communication, how could I forget those? And we really pay a lot of attention to opportunities for industry connection and for all sorts of other enrichment beyond the subjects that you study. So within the bachelor degree, there are opportunities to do internships in science and design. And then particularly, especially in the Master of Engineering, we work really hard to create lots and lots of opportunities for our students to connect with industry. And one of those programs is the 4-credit internship or other internship opportunities, which we've grown very strongly over the last few years. And in fact, we had more than 500 internships in 2019, and they weren't only available to domestic students. About 50% of those went to international students. And we have internships overseas as well as locally. And we provide professional preparation and support for students in those internships, and we help to source them. And indeed, we have 4 dedicated full-time staff in the school whose primary role is to manage internships. But there are also lots and lots of other opportunities. You could do your final year capstone design projects with industry, and many of our subjects also have very strong industry connections. So that's a little bit of a whirlwind tour of how you study engineering at Melbourne via this pathway, typically a 3+2 model, and also our focus on industry connection, especially in the Master of Engineering. But I'm sure you really want to hear from some of our current students and from some of our recent graduates. So we have our current student and alumni panel. So what we now might do is go through in turn and ask each of these panelists who they are, what they've studied, sort of essentially how they got to where they are at this point in time, where they're working for the two who are working. So why don't we start? I'm going to start in the order that I have them on the screen with Inushka.
Hello, how are you? A little bit about myself. So obviously my name is Inushka. As on screen, I did do my Bachelor of Science here and then the Masters of Engineering, which I'll graduate at the end of this year. In terms of internships, I've worked at a company called Wood PLC last 2 summers ago, so 2018, 2019. And then since last year, March, I've been working at a company called BayWa RE, and they're in the renewable energy space. So they're actually quite a global company based from Germany. What else? I'm also completing a capstone project, which my final report is due in 1 week time from now, so pretty busy right now. And that's with Boeing, so it is also an industry capstone project, which I won't be able to discuss too much, unfortunately.
Fantastic, Anushka. So you could tell us about it, but you know, you'd have to kill us afterwards.
100%.
Maybe if we can jump to Jocelyn.
Hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn. I'm currently doing a Masters of Engineering, specializing in mechanical with business. So the pathway I did was actually also studying undergrad here. So I did a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Systems. To be honest, I quite like it because there's the various opportunities to take a range of subjects. So I also did some electives in anatomy and breadth in law. These subjects actually proved to be very useful. One of the projects that I'm currently working on is an exoskeleton project. So having that background actually really does help along with the engineering skill sets.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jocelyn. Could we go to Kapil now?
Hey guys, so my name is Kapil, and I studied, just like Jocelyn, I studied a Bachelor of Science majoring in Mechanical Systems, and then went on to study Master of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Melbourne. In my personal opinion, the Melbourne model is really powerful because what I kind of gained, I'll share my personal experience, what I personally gained from that entire experience was that even when I was doing my Bachelor of Science majoring in Mechanical Systems, I did breadth and electives in everything ranging from civil engineering to electrical engineering to artificial intelligence. and even a few subjects in economics and management. And even when I was going on to my master's, I did internships at 3 different companies, all of them being in different industries, one of them being in the mechanical engineering industry, another one being in the sustainability engineering industry, another one being in a more IT type industry. And what that kind of did was really kind of broaden my horizons in terms of it gave me the best potential platform to choose my career, to choose what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So right now, I'm working at WSP, working as a sustainability consultant, and at the same time, I'm also managing my own jewelry business. And all of that knowledge and how I'm able to manage my jewelry business, even with an engineering degree, is because of the Melbourne model. So even when I was studying my master's, I picked up a few subjects, business economic subjects and a business administration subjects, whereby I kind of learned how to manage my own business. And that has stayed with me all this time. And now I'm able to manage my own business without any external help from anybody else. And I'm also working as a sustainability engineer, which wasn't really exactly my major. If you look at it, I studied mechanical engineering, but the stuff that I learned in my mechanical engineering degree, I picked and chose specific stuff from it. For example, thermodynamics and building envelope design, building information modeling. And I chose to learn that for the rest of my life. And that's why how I can become a sustainability engineer now. Thanks.
That's fantastic. Keppel, can you hook me up with some cheap jewellery for my wife by any chance?
Sure, Jamie. We
Oh,
can talk afterwards
hey,
about that.
you beauty. Xing Yu, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, evening everyone. Xing is my name. I'm a co-founder and chief operating officer of Navi Medical Technologies, a company I started with 5 other co-founders that's spun out of the University of Melbourne capstone subject. A bit about myself, I'm one of the interesting cases that Professor Evans spoke about. I started my Bachelor of Commerce majoring in economics and finance. Throughout my journey through my bachelor's degree, I realized that I didn't quite cut the normal shape of a management consultant or a banker in investment banking, and I didn't quite fit into that mold. And I always wanted to be an engineer, hence my decision to pursue with the bioengineering breadth sequence and eventually into the Master of Biomedical Engineering, which is a really good way to bridge the gap between medicine and also developing new technologies. Things for me really took a change in my second semester of my first year. I went on exchange to Switzerland, Zurich, to ETH Zurich, one of the top technology universities in the world, and things really changed there. I got a much wider view of the world, and I got to participate in things like hackathons, which are short 24-hour, 48-hour sprints of developing new technologies and businesses. And coming back to Melbourne, I was really itching for my next big challenge. And that's where things changed even more. I enrolled in a course called Biodesign Innovation. It's run in conjunction with the Melbourne School of Engineering and the Melbourne Business School. And that's where I met another co-founder of mine, engineering co-founder, along with 3 other business students. And we were sought to investigate clinical needs to develop a new to address unmet clinical needs in the medical device space. But with the engineering and the business skills put together, we were missing the 3rd ingredient, which was the clinical side. So we teamed up with another doctor at the Royal Women's Hospital, and we spent the next few months following this doctor around like little ducklings and investigating different clinical needs until we finally found one, which is the unmet need of solving central access procedures in newborn patients. We finished our course, developed initial prototypes, and around 6 months later, we started entering in a few pitch competitions and started winning a few prizes. And things got even more interesting when I was faced with a decision right after my graduation of I had a graduate job offer in a large accounting firm to work in R&D incentives, but we also had an opportunity to develop the startup company and to develop the concept that we had created within Melbourne University. I decided to do the latter. I put my secure job dreams on hold. I packed my bags, and the day after my graduation, I flew to the US to develop my company from there. And currently we're growing very quickly. We're raising more funding, getting more prototypes done. We still get to work in interesting engineering problems. We're hiring new students at the moment, including through the internship subject at Melbourne University. But it really comes back to my personal mission of, I understand how difficult it might be to find a new job as a biomedical engineer once you graduate from university. So now we're really giving the opportunities back to new graduates and new talent as well. But it's been a really interesting journey so far.
That's fantastic, Xing. How did you find the I guess the courage to make what might seem a sort of a more risky decision than taking that nice job you had lined up into a more adventurous sort of role?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I did an internship at a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers, large company based in Docklands, 1,000 employees in one office, and I found that the decisions that I could make there were quite incremental, and I was helping a lot of R&D companies at the time, but I wanted to do my own R&D myself. So it kind of spun from there, where I really wanted to work on something with a bit more impact and to make larger decisions. But also as a startup founder, to work in newborn and pediatric care, there's not a lot of companies working in to develop medical devices for such vulnerable patients with them in mind, and this was a real opportunity to make our mark in this particular specialty. So it's something that was really passionate for each and every one of us.
Fantastic. I'm curious as if you were to give advice to students coming through on the things that you should be doing to get yourself the best chance of getting an internship or some work experience during your university studies, what would you do? What advice would you give? I think that can be to anyone, whoever wants to jump in.
Maybe I've got my mic open, then I'll leave it to the rest. I think it takes courage, first of all. In this age, it's fine to research jobs online, and there's certainly plenty of jobs that can be found online through Seek and Careers Online. But the best jobs come from referrals and speaking with people and really understanding what is actually out there. And sometimes, especially for me, when I got my early internships and early jobs, they weren't from applying online where we're competing against tens of thousands of other people. It's usually speaking directly with recent graduates of the company or even the managers, and just having a coffee, of course, in a post-pandemic world, to meet up face to face and really get to learn about what other people are working on. And you might not even be asking for a job at that time, but the fact that you've shown interest in a company shows that, okay, well, there's potential that you might be interested in that company in the future. So it really is about networking. I know it's a bit of a buzzword, but it really is true, to be able to get out of the building. And it's very easy for engineers to stay inside and to code and to develop on things, but it's really getting the courage to go outside and network is extremely important.
Terrific. Would someone else like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Oh, sorry, Jocelyn, do you want to go first?
Go first.
Sure, okay. So I totally agree with Xing when he says that most jobs are found through referrals and networking. I would say that that number would be even higher than 60 to 70%. So in my opinion, when I first secured my first internship, I had to go through so many rejections. And I was only able to secure my first internship because I kind of knew the owner of the company through a friend. And I feel like that's the biggest thing. That's the best way that you can kind of secure an internship and potentially a job as well. And not only that, like when you're networking with people, you are also improving your communication skills, which is also a huge part of your day-to-day job, no matter which industry you're working in. You need to be able to show that you can communicate your ideas succinctly, and at the same time, you're confident in your ideas. Because a person can be super smart, they can be really good at their job, but if they're not able to convey their ideas in a proper manner, then they would not be able to succeed. So I feel like networking not only helps you secure the job, but it also hones your communication skills, which are really important in the world.
Great advice. So now we'll hear from Jocelyn.
So some of my experiences in terms of networking and meeting people, there's also a lot of clubs at the university that you can join and be part of, whether it be interested, say if you're interested, for me it was sports, so I did softball, and that gives you an opportunity to meet a lot of different people and hear their experiences from different aspects of where they're either studying or working a little bit. In addition to that, there are also a lot of clubs that you can also be part of. Say I was part of a club called MUR, so it's Motorsports University Racing. So it gives you a little bit of a practical experience. That was actually also one of the reasons why I ended up choosing to do mechanical. After doing something more hands-on, I realized I actually really liked it, and that was how I decided to pursue specifically mechanical out of all the different types of engineering. So there are a lot of those kind of opportunities, especially when you're in your undergrad and you're still trying to figure out where you want to go. You want to either meet people, you have common interests, and then you can also have a look into clubs that do specialize in areas that you're curious about.
Cool. I might jump in and provide a different perspective. I completely agree with what everyone's provided. My first internship was actually through someone I met through a subject called creative innovative engineering, which works with industry contacts. But I guess as part of experience, you will be applying and you'll be going forth with applications. And the biggest lesson I've learned is the two most important skills are sales and marketing. In my personal perspective, not just in terms of a business, but like selling yourself and marketing yourself is very, very important. And so to be able to do that, you have to do practice writing a resume, practice writing a CV, or get a part-time job, get a leadership position where you're forced to communicate, where you're forced to sell yourself in a certain perspective, or you're trying to sell a product, or even just trying to communicate and sell an idea within the team. All those things come into play when it comes to putting your application in. More than that, there are services within the university that assist in getting your CVs and your resumes up and running. When you go meet individuals and you pitch yourself in terms of getting a position there, or if you're just trying to learn more about the industry, what I've done is after I've built a good relationship with what I call a mentor now, but an industry contact, is I get them to review my resume and CV so that I can improve it and see what their perspective in regards to the application is, even if I'm not applying to their company. And so for me, that's allowed me to increase, I guess, the probability of chance of actually getting to later stages. And first year, second year when I applied, I was terrible. But nowadays I tend to, for at least engineering firms, I tend to get across to the interview stage relatively easy. But it takes a lot of practice and skill. So don't expect to get it in one go. Like you don't get good at COD after one day, do you? So you got to repeat it until you get good at it.
Could you tell us
Jamie,
a little bit more? Yep, go Katie.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. We have a lot of questions coming through about why somebody has, like, why you've chosen engineering, like in high school or, you know, even while you're exploring in your undergraduate. What was it that drew you to engineering?
I'll start. For me, I don't know if like since a young age, I've kind of known I wanted to do like engineering and build something. Initially for me, it was aerospace engineering, and like for a long time, that's what I wanted to do. But unfortunately, my dad crushed my dreams and being like, there's no jobs in Australia. So I was like, how do I get the best opportunity to try as many different areas as I wanted? So when I first entered Melbourne, as everyone already mentioned, you get to test everything out. So I tried the biology, I tried chemistry, mathematics, I started economics in my Bachelor of Science, did a bit of computing, I tried the electrical, mechanical, and civil systems all the way through, and then decided to do electrical because I found it challenging, but also it's quite a broad area. You can interact with a lot of mechatronics students, mechanical students, and biomedical students as well, working with different technologies. So I thought it was kind of a nice sweet spot between interaction with the rest of the engineering disciplines and also software as well. So that's why I ended up choosing engineering. But yeah, just solve the world essentially. So yeah.
All right. For me, I was curious about it because I didn't really know too much about engineering. It was just a recommendation I had from a high school maths teacher. It was like, you should consider engineering. And that was just something I kept in the back of my head. Went into uni, and then because of the Melbourne model, it was nice I could choose a range of choices of subjects. And I was just pretty much exploring, trying clubs in mechanical, trying clubs in different areas. So I went from doing Melbourne University racing, did some hands-on as a junior, then went into a robotics arm, and then was building robotics and playing around with mechatronics. I was just pretty much just trying different projects at uni that really solidified why I was interested in engineering. And I loved it because it's nice to be able to create and solve problems that people have and actually build a difference. And that's pretty much why I ended up doing this.
I actually did not know that I wanted to do engineering when I first started out. Even though I enrolled myself in a Bachelor of Science degree, well, I enrolled myself into a Bachelor of Science degree because I knew that I wanted to do more science-based subjects as compared to commerce, because I was personally not really good at thinking about management and marketing and business administration and that sort of stuff. So that's why I just chose Bachelor of Science. But then it wasn't even up until my second year that I chose a major to go into mechanical systems. And that is why I feel the Melbourne model is really great. It helps you figure out what you want to do by trying out a variety of different subjects and a variety of different majors. So when I started out uni, I was really keen about, as same as Anushka, I was super keen about aerospace engineering, even civil engineering, because I knew civil industry in Australia is huge. So if I wanted to look at it from a job perspective, I wanted to go into civil engineering. But then when I tried out a few variety of different subjects, I wasn't really keen about civil engineering. And then I think the first subject that kind of inclined me towards mechanical engineering was mechanical design. So that there was basically that subject involved us in building small robots that would retrieve and deliver a parcel, which was in our case a ping pong ball, from one place to another. It was as simple as that. But then different engineering teams, different student teams had to build their own projects, and like that entire process of going through designing and then building, prototyping, and then delivering our result really excited me. And that's why I kind of went into mechanical engineering. But I have to add this one point, that it's totally okay to not know. And I feel like that's actually an advantage, to not know what you want to do, because you don't want to box yourself in one thing right at the start of your kind of education, like your tertiary education. You should try out a variety of different things so that you get to know what you actually want to do later on in your life.
Yeah, for myself, I was one of those classic lost courses after secondary school. Submitted some of my university preference without truly having a true passion about what exactly I wanted to do. It was simply too early, hadn't had the work experience and hadn't had opportunities to listen to panels and go out and meet people like that. So I did go into the commerce degree initially. I always knew that there would be an option to do engineering after, and I'm really glad that it had that flexibility. Did some engineering subjects, quickly ruled out commerce, moved into engineering, and the rest is history.
Fantastic. Do you have another question, Katie, or would you like me to fire one
I
off?
do have a question for you, Jamie.
For me?
There's lots of questions. Yes, there's lots of questions coming through about why would we choose to do a bachelor and a master's degree versus doing a Bachelor of Engineering at a different institution. So I think everybody's sort of touched on this, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
Yeah. So how much more I can add than our panelists, but so for many of the reasons that I've spoken about, they've spoken about the flexibility a lot. I'm big on the breadth component. If you say you do science or you do commerce, that as I've explained before, I reckon the breadth is really important. If you finish with a master's of engineering instead of a Bachelor of Engineering, it might create a few more opportunities. Certainly, we've got some higher level European accreditation that you can't get with a Bachelor of Engineering degree. And so that higher level of qualification with having a master's may make a difference, especially internationally, I think. So maybe that's just a couple of extra points to add on to what the panelists have all covered so well already.
Do you mind if I quickly add another point? The bachelor's in Melbourne, if you do the Bachelor of Science and you're going into the master's, it's a 5-year versus a 4-year bachelor. So yes, it is 1 year longer, but you can think of that year as a way to kind of test out as many pathways as possible. And so you have that flexibility ingrained directly into it. You leave it with 1 year, but you could finish off, as Shin has, a Bachelor of Commerce and a master's, and that opens up so many more doors than if you just have a bachelor's of engineering. Yeah.
Can I ask one, Katie? What subject should students really be doing at high school if they have a potential interest in engineering? What would you recommend as sort of the really important subjects to do? Kapil, would you want to take that one?
Well, that might be a little bit tricky for me because I was an international student. So I actually did my high school in India. But for me, one thing that I really loved in high school and really helped me out in my bachelor's and master's degree was physics. So I loved physics so much more than biology or chemistry. So that was kind of like one sign that I knew that, okay, I'm probably going to go into engineering because I love physics so much. But then I feel like also you should definitely have an interest in mathematics because that just opens up so many avenues in terms of going to commerce if you want, or engineering is always there. So yeah, I feel like those might be the most important. But like I feel like people who have done their high schooling over here in Australia might be able to answer that a lot better.
No, good response. Science, technology, engineering, maths subjects is always excellent, and as Professor Evans says, teamwork, communication sprinkled in there with little dashes of spices is always helpful too. But I think things like extracurricular activities is always helpful too. Work experience, talking to people, attending meetings, and watching people speak about different topics at different conferences is always helpful beyond just the subjects, but also taking it one step further in extracurricular activities is also extremely important as well.
Would you encourage
on.
people? I just wondering if you'd encourage students to do specialist maths or what the trade-off is with specialist maths. If you've done, if you did your
Yeah, for specialist maths, it certainly helped with calculus 2. When I did my first year of university, calculus 2 was a initial engineering subject that I had to do, and a lot of my peers really struggled in calc 2, but it was a lot of it was already done in specialist maths, which I was very thankful for. So it did help ease some of the learning curve as well. And myself, coming from a Bachelor of Commerce degree, not all of my subjects were engineering based, which meant I had to fill in the gaps somewhere else. So having those subjects covered in my BCE were definitely very important. Don't ask me what I learned in specialist maths so many years ago, but I remember the feeling, and it was definitely very helpful.
Yeah, I'm a little biased, so I'm always pretty much yes to any maths and physics. So that's definitely locked in for me. Specialist you don't have to do. You can do Calc 1 and then go into Calc 2. If you do specialist and I think you get above 34 or 36 raw score, I believe, you go straight into Calc 2. So if you do have the mathematics background and you kind of want to skip a subject, that's what I personally did. So I completed both linear algebra and calculus 2 my first year, and I did engineering mathematics in my second semester, first year, and then I moved on to more mathematics subjects because I personally enjoyed it. But it allows you to skip subjects, which I personally think is a kind of a smarter way to approach it if you can. Yeah, that's my point of view.
Fantastic. So Katie, I don't know if you want to hit the last question or I've got a quick one.
Maybe if you do your quick one and then I'll have one more.
Okay.
I think we'll have time for.
All right, beautiful. So either I'd like to get to hear from you, or either your all-time favourite subject that you've studied at university, or just your overall best moment. You can choose one or the other of those things.
How about me first? Yeah, the subject that was my favorite was also my best moment, and it's also led to what my career is at the moment, which was the biodesign innovation course. It's a year-long course offered in the masters, so it's master's specific. And up until the point of doing biodesign innovation, I think I was really itching to do something very practical. Up until that stage, there are some theory-based subjects as well, which are excellent and extremely important. But my first taste of practical engineering was in biodesign innovation, and we ended up developing a concept, developing a business plan as well, and it's turned into a job for myself that I can continue full time, and we can start hiring other people and developing on new projects as well. So it was just the excellent mix for me.
Fantastic. Jocelyn.
One of the subjects Phil actually mentioned, mechanical design. So it was in the undergrad and bachelor's that I was taking it. It's nice to actually get given a problem and then actually try and build a robot yourself to actually solve that issue and go from the very start and actually hands-on and build it yourself. It was also like a huge highlight for me, also getting the opportunity to also compete with other people in my cohort and see how our design differs from others. I was also very fortunate in that regard that I got given the opportunity to go to the national finals. So then with the support of Melbourne Uni, they actually gave me the opportunity to go to the national finals, meet other mechanical students and other mechatronics students from different universities and see how everyone tackles the same problem, but in so many different ways.
Fantastic. Anushka?
Anushka, I think you're on mute.
Might be on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll choose our best moment. So for me, the best moment was being able to present at nationals and then in Silicon Valley in America in September. So what that was for was through a club called Enactus Melbourne. And essentially Enactus is a worldwide organization that pushes students to utilize their degrees and their skills to create social enterprises. So essentially any business that can help the people, the planet, or general prosperity. And essentially how I kind of got formed with that was like an awkward interaction at JB Hi-Fi, which I worked at with the current president. So that interaction led me to actually applying and kind of joining that club. And then right now I'm actually the vice president of projects for the club. And so essentially I do overview all our social enterprises and assist with that. But yeah, my best moment was being able to go and present to nationals, pitch our idea, win it, and then go to Silicon Valley and meet so many other engineers, doctors, commerce students, environmentalists, journalists, just any degree you can name, essentially throughout the world, coming together to present our ideas. And it's always nice and kind of awkward to present a program that we only made about 30,000 during the year, and the team comes in and made I think about 70 million that last year through their project. And it's always good to see the scale that we can apply our skills as students, and knowing that always keeps me motivated, knowing that another team across the world has been able to raise that much money towards a good cause through their business. Yeah, that's my best moment.
Terrific. Well, you're all making me feel very bad, like I've done nothing with my life. And oh, never mind. Kapil.
Oh gosh, I couldn't possibly choose a single subject. Like there's just so many that come to my mind. Like if I had to choose one for presenting and where I learned the power of communication, I would have to choose creating innovative engineering. If I had to choose one where I love doing the subject, even though it wasn't my major, I would have to do quantum mechanics and special relativity. If I had to choose one from mechanical engineering, I would have to say design for manufacture, where we actually build a proper miniature size gearbox for a crane, which was so much fun. And winning the Orica Design Prize for that was just a cherry on the top. There was just so many subjects. I just loved each and every single subject of my degree. Yeah.
Brilliant. Magnificent. I'll hand back to Katie now.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to the panel. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for joining us for this evening's webinar. If you have any last questions, you can submit them in the chat right now, or I think Jamie's got a link on the screen to our study website that you can submit your questions that way. Thank you to Jamie, Anushka, Jocelyn, Kapil, and Xing for joining us tonight. I've learned so much from you myself, and I work in the School of Engineering, so that's really awesome. We hope that we've answered all your questions this evening. And again, if you didn't get them answered, you can submit them through the website. And also, if you might have been taking some notes and you didn't quite get them down, this webinar will be available for viewing on the website in 24 to 48 hours, and you'll also get a link sent out to you for that as well. So I hope everybody has a great evening. And don't forget to join the rest of our Meet Melbourne webinars in the coming weeks over May. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you.